Can you imagine these words? Those were the last words my father said to me before he shoved me into an October storm and locked the door behind me. Get out of my house, I don't need a sick daughter. I was 15 years old. I had no coat, no phone, no money, just a school backpack with algebra homework inside, and rain already soaking through my sneakers. 3 hours later the police called him, and when he heard what they said, his face went white as a ghost. But by then it was way too late. I'm Sherry Wales. I'm 28 now, sitting in my Boston apartment, watching rain slide down the window. There's a letter on my kitchen table, shaky handwriting on cheap nursing home stationery. After 13 years of silence, my father wants to see me. Says he's dying, says he's sorry. Funny thing about rain, it always takes me back to that night. October 14, 2011. I remember coming home from school like it was any other Tuesday. Backpack over one shoulder, head full of the algebra test I just aced. I was thinking about dinner, about homework, about the band poster I wanted to buy with my birthday money. Normal 15-year-old stuff. I had absolutely no idea that in less than 2 hours, I'd be walking alone through a freezing storm, wondering if I was going to survive the night. The moment I stepped through that front door, I knew something was wrong. My father was standing in the living room, looking like a volcano about to explode. His face was the color of raw meat. His hands were shaking, and he was holding a wad of cash in one fist and empty pill bottles in the other. My sister Corinne stood right behind him. She was 4 years older than me, and she had this expression on her face: concerned, worried, heartbroken, the perfect picture of a devoted older sister who just discovered something terrible about her baby sibling. But I saw her eyes. I caught that little flicker. She couldn't quite hide satisfaction. Our stepmother, Jolene, hovered in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed together, saying absolutely nothing. That was her specialty, saying nothing while bad things happened. My father didn't even let me put down my backpack. He started screaming like I'd set the house on fire. He said I'd been stealing from his wallet for months. He said I'd been buying pills, hiding them in my room. He said Karen had found the evidence. Cash stuffed in my dresser, pill bottles in my closet, text messages proving I was talking to drug dealers. I tried to explain. I tried to tell him I'd never touched his wallet, never seen those pills, didn't even know what he was talking about. But the words died in my throat because I realized something horrible. He wasn't listening. His mind was already made up. Corinne had spent the whole day preparing him, feeding him lies like poison wrapped in sugar. She stood there looking devastated, telling him she tried so hard to help me, tried to get me to stop. She said she hadn't wanted to tell him, but she just couldn't watch her little sister destroy herself anymore. It's a masterpiece performance, Academy Award worthy. And my father swallowed every single word like it was gospel truth. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises and dragged me toward the front door. My backpack was right there where I dropped it. He picked it up and threw it at my chest so hard I stumbled backward. Then he opened the door. Rain was already coming down in sheets, thunder rolling somewhere in the distance. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees since that morning. And my father looked me dead in the eyes and said those words again. Get out of my house, I don't need a sick daughter. He pushed me onto the porch. The door slammed, the deadbolt clicked. And just like that, at 15 years old, I was homeless. I stood on that porch for maybe 5 minutes, completely frozen, not from the cold though that was coming, but from shock. I kept waiting for the door to open again, waiting for someone to say it was all a big misunderstanding. Nobody came. My phone was sitting on my bedroom desk. I wasn't allowed to grab anything except what was already in my hands. My backpack had textbooks, a half-eaten granola bar, and absolutely nothing useful for surviving a night outside. No jacket, no money, no way to call for help. 2011 payphones still existed somewhere. But who carries quarters? Not a 15-year-old who spent her allowance on band posters. Priorities right. Straight A student, 0-star survival skills. So I started walking. I didn't make a conscious decision about where to go. My body just moved on autopilot toward the only safe place I knew. My grandmother Dorothy's house. 7 miles away. My mom's mom. The one person who always looked at me like I mattered. 7 miles doesn't sound like much when you're driving. When you're walking through freezing rain, in canvas sneakers with no coat. It might as well be 700. Route 9 stretched ahead of me. Dark and slick with rain, cars splashed past without slowing down. I was just a shadow on the roadside. Shape nobody wanted to look at too closely. After the first mile my clothes were soaked through to my skin. After the second mile I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. After the third mile my teeth were chattering so hard I thought they might crack, but I kept walking. What else could I do? Go back and beg my father to believe me? He'd already made up his mind. I had nowhere else to go except forward. One numb step at a time. The thing about hypothermia is that you don't realize it's happening until it's almost too late. Your body starts shutting down piece by piece and your brain gets foggy, and suddenly, sitting down for just a minute seems like the best idea in the world. Just a quick rest, just until you catch your breath. I made it 4 miles before my legs gave out. There was a mailbox up ahead. I remember thinking I'd just lean against it for a second, catch my breath, then I'd keep going. Grandma's house was only 3 more miles. I could make it, but my knees buckled before I got there. The gravel came up fast and then everything went dark. 3 hours after throwing his daughter into a storm, my father's phone rang. The voice of the other end was cold and professional. Officer Daniels with County Police. There'd been an incident. His daughter had been found unconscious on Route 9, hypothermia. She was being transported to County General Hospital. And one more thing, sir. Child Protective Services has been notified. A caseworker is already on site. We have some questions about why a 15-year-old girl was walking alone in a dangerous storm, with no coat and no phone. We're going to need you to come down to the hospital and bring whatever evidence you have. My father's face went pale as bone. I know because the hospital staff told me later. They said he looked like a man watching his whole life crumble in slow motion. Corinne was standing right next to him when he got that call. And for the first time her perfect mask slipped. Just for a second, but it was enough, because here's the thing about that night. The thing that changed everything. The woman who found me unconscious on that roadside wasn't just some random stranger driving home. Her name was Gloria Hensley, and she'd spent 35 years working for Child Protective Services. She'd seen every kind of abuse, every kind of neglect, every kind of lie that parents tell about their children. She knew exactly what she was looking at when she found a teenage girl in the rain, with no coat and no phone, and no one looking for her. And she wasn't about to let it slide. My father thought he was getting rid of a problem that night. Thought he was cleaning house, cutting out the bad apple, protecting his family from a sick daughter who didn't deserve his love. But what he actually did was light a fuse. And he had no idea what was about to explode. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the story, please subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what time is it there. I see everything. Thank you so much for your support. Now, to understand what happened that night, to really understand why my sister did what she did, I need to take you back to when everything started falling apart. My mother, Patricia, died in 2006 cancer. I was 10 years old. Corinne was 14. One day we had a mom who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and braided my hair for school pictures. The next day we were standing by a hospital bed, watching machines beep slower and slower until they stopped altogether. My father didn't handle it well. That's putting it mildly. He basically collapsed in on himself like a dying star. Went to work, came home, sat in his recliner, stared at nothing. The house could have burned down around him, and I'm not sure he would have noticed. So Corinne stepped up at 14. She became the one who cooked dinner and signed permission slips, and made sure I got to school on time. She became the responsible one, the mature one, the daughter my father could lean on. And he praised her for it constantly. What would I do without you, Karen? You're so grown up, Karen. You're the glue holding this family together. Corinne, I don't think he ever once asked how she was handling our mother's death. He just expected her to handle everything else instead. My father had 2 blind spots in life. His oldest daughter and his beloved recliner. Both were worn out, falling apart at the seams, and desperately needed to be replaced. But he couldn't see it. Men and their recliners. I swear what nobody saw, what my father absolutely refused to see, was what happened when he wasn't looking. Corinne wasn't just stepping up. She was building a kingdom. And in her kingdom, I was the peasant who needed to be kept in her place. It started small. Homework that mysteriously disappeared the night before it was due. Permission slips for field trips that somehow never made it to my teachers. My favorite shirt shrunk in the wash. Then another oops. Must have been an accident. Birthday party invitations I sent out that my friends never received. Messages from classmates that got lost. A reputation being built brick by brick without me even knowing. She'd go to my teachers with this sad, concerned expression and tell them I was struggling after our mother's death, that I was acting out at home, that they should be patient with me, because I was going through such a hard time. She painted a picture of a troubled child, and everyone believed her because she was so mature, so responsible, so caring. I tried to tell my father once, sat him down and explained that Corinne was sabotaging me, that she was lying about me to everyone, that something was seriously wrong. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You're just jealous of your sister. He said she's trying to help this family. You should be grateful after that. I learned to keep my mouth shut. Stay small, stay quiet. Survive until I could get out. 2 years after my mom died, my father remarried. Jolene was nice enough at first. She smiled a lot and made casseroles, and tried really hard to be part of our family. Corinne immediately started calling her mom. It was strategic, I think. A way to cement her position as the good daughter. The loyal one. I couldn't do it. I couldn't call this stranger mom, when my real mother had only been gone 2 years. It wasn't about Jolene, it was about my own heart not being ready. But that quiet rebellion cost me. From that day forward, Jolene treated me like an outsider in my own home. She and Karen formed their own little club, and I wasn't invited by the time I was 15. The lines were clearly drawn. Karen was the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. I was the troubled one, the difficult one, the daughter who just couldn't get it together. And then there was the money. My mother had set up trust funds for both of us before she died. $45,000 each. Accessible when we turned 18. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. Safety net, a gift from a mother who knew she wouldn't be there to help us start our adult lives. Corinne turned 18 in 2009 and got her share immediately. It was gone within 11 months. A flashy sports car, designer clothes, expensive gifts for her boyfriend Trent, a smooth-talking guy with big ideas, and absolutely no legitimate income. By the time I was kicked out 2 years later, Corinne was completely broke. Her trust fund was a distant memory, and Trent was always talking about his next big opportunity, his next investment scheme, the deal that was definitely going to make them rich. My $45,000 was just sitting there untouchable, until 2014, when I turned 18, unless something happened to me first. See, my mother's trust had a clause in it, a protection mechanism she probably thought would help us. If either daughter was declared legally incompetent or institutionalized before age 21, her share would be managed by a court-appointed family guardian, until she recovered. Karen and Trent figured out what that meant. If I got institutionalized for substance abuse, say because my father found pills and cash, and evidence of drug dealing in my room, then someone would need to manage my trust fund on my behalf. Someone responsible, someone trustworthy, someone like a concerned older sister, who only wanted what was best for me. $45,000. That's what I was worth to Corinne. That's the price she put on her own sister. The week before she destroyed my life, she put her plan into motion. Small cash withdrawals from my father's account using his ATM card. She knew his PIN because she handled all the household finances. Trent's empty prescription bottles collected and saved. A prepaid burner phone purchased at a convenience store, loaded with fake text messages. On the morning of October 14th, while I was eating breakfast and thinking about my algebra test, Karen slipped into my room and planted everything cash in my dresser drawer, pills in my closet, a paper with the burner phone number as proof of my drug dealer contact. Then she went to our father with tears in her eyes and told him his youngest daughter had a terrible secret. He believed every word. Why wouldn't he? Karen had spent 9 years being the perfect daughter, the responsible one, the one who never lied. And I had spent 9 years being painted as the troubled one, before I even knew the portrait existed. But by the time I walked through that front door after school, My trial was already over. The verdict was guilty and the sentence was exile. That's how I ended up on Route 9 in October rain, walking toward my grandmother's house, like it was the only light left in the world. But Corinne had made one mistake, one tiny error in her perfect plan. She didn't account for Gloria Hensley. I don't remember much about collapsing, just the gravel biting into my palms, and then nothing, like someone switched off a television in the middle of a show. What I remember is waking up. Fluorescent lights. The smell of antiseptic and industrial floor cleaner. A scratchy hospital blanket tucked around me, like I was something fragile, something worth protecting. I hadn't felt that way in years. And there was a woman sitting beside my bed, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, reading glasses perched on her nose, a paperback novel closed in her lap. She looked like someone's grandmother, the kind who baked cookies and always had tissues in her purse, but her eyes were sharp, observant, cataloging everything they saw. Her name was Gloria Hensley. She was 67 years old, retired after 35 years with Child Protective Services. She'd seen every kind of abuse, every kind of neglect, every kind of cruelty that adults could inflict on children. And on a cold October night, driving home from her book club meeting, her headlights had caught something by the roadside. A teenage girl unconscious, soaking wet, alone. Gloria pulled over so fast, her tires screamed against the pavement. She had an emergency blanket in her trunk, old habits from her CPS days, and she wrapped me up like a burrito while she called 911. She stayed with me until the ambulance arrived. She followed the ambulance to the hospital, and when I woke up 4 hours later, she was still there. That woman might have saved my life, not just because she found me before the hypothermia finished what the storm started, but because she was exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. She handed me a cup of coffee when I opened my eyes. Hospital cafeteria coffee, the kind that tastes like regret, brewed at 200 degrees. "This is terrible," she said. "But it's warm," I laughed. Actually laughed for the first time in hours, maybe days. She smiled back, this knowing, gentle smile that said she understood more than I realized. "There she is," she said. "Now why don't you tell me why a 15-year-old was walking alone on Route 9 in a storm, with no coat and no phone?" So I told her everything, the accusations, the planted evidence, the years of Corinne's manipulation. I told her things I'd never told anyone, because no one had ever actually listened. Gloria just sat there nodding occasionally, never interrupting, never doubting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I believe you, and I'm going to help you prove it." Those 7 words changed my life. While I was unconscious, things had been happening. The hospital contacted police because a minor had been found in a dangerous situation. Police tried to reach my next of kin. That meant calling my father. I would have loved to see his face when Officer Daniels delivered the news. Apparently it went something like this. "Mr. Walls, your 15-year-old daughter was found unconscious on Route 9. She says you expelled her from your home this evening during a storm. Hypothermia. She's a county general. We need you to come in, and Sir Child Protective Services has been notified. A caseworker is already on site. Bring whatever evidence you have." My father and Corinne arrived at the hospital around 10:15 that night. I was awake by then, sitting up in my hospital bed with Gloria beside me. Also in the room, a CPS caseworker named Maria Santos, and a uniformed police officer. Not exactly the welcome committee my father was expecting. He looked shaken, not guilty, not yet, just annoyed and confused, like this was all a big inconvenience. Corinne was right behind him, and for the first time in my life, I saw her look nervous. The smirk she'd been wearing when I left wasn't anywhere to be found. They expected to find a scared, apologetic girl ready to confess her sins and beg to come home. Instead, they found a room full of professionals, asking very pointed questions about why a child was wandering alone in dangerous weather, with no means of communication or protection. The power dynamic had shifted, and Corinne felt it. She tried to run her usual script. Concerned older sister, troubled younger sibling. We just want what's best for her. But Maria Santos wasn't buying it. 30 years of social work had given her a finely tuned radar for deception, and Karen was setting off every alarm. Then my grandmother arrived. Dorothy Reeves was 67 years old, 5 feet 2 inches of pure determination, and she was absolutely not in the mood for nonsense. My mother was her only daughter, and I was her only grandchild, and she had never trusted my father or his new family. She lived 40 minutes from the hospital. She made it in 25. I heard her before I saw her, that distinctive click of sensible heels, coming down the hallway at a pace that meant business. She swept into my room like a small, silver-haired hurricane, and immediately positioned herself between me and my father. "That's my granddaughter," she announced to everyone present. "What has this fool done now?" My father tried to explain, tried to justify, started talking about the stealing, the pills, the evidence. Dorothy listened for about 30 seconds before holding up one hand. "Raymond," she said, "I've known you for 15 years, and you've never been the sharpest tool in the shed. But this might be your dumbest moment yet. You threw a child into a storm, based on what? Pills that appeared out of nowhere. Cash that magically materialized. Did you even ask her side of the story?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Dorothy nodded. "That's what I thought. Here's the thing about my grandmother. She didn't just love me, she fought for me. That night while I sat exhausted and hypothermic in a hospital bed, Dorothy Reeves went to war. She demanded an emergency custody hearing right there. Right then. It was nearly mid. But she didn't care. She called a family court judge who owed her a favor. Apparently Dorothy had been on the PTA with his wife for 15 years, and got him on the phone. The hospital social worker presented the facts. A minor child expelled into dangerous weather conditions. No investigation conducted before expulsion. No attempt to verify accusations. Child found unconscious with early-stage hypothermia. Father's evidence unexamined by any professional. By 12:30 in the morning, I had a new home emergency. Temporary guardianship was granted to Dorothy Reeves. Effective immediately, my father was ordered to have no contact with me until a full investigation was completed. CPS would be interviewing everyone, me, Corin, my father, Jolene, and they would be taking a very close look at that so-called evidence. As we walked out of the hospital, my father tried one more time. He reached toward me, started to say something. Dorothy stepped between us without breaking stride. "You don't get to touch her," she said. "You don't get to talk to her. You had your chance to be her father, and you threw it away, literally threw it into a storm. Now we're leaving." She guided me out to her old Buick, the one she'd been driving since before I was born, helped me into the passenger seat, tucked another blanket around me even though the car, our heater, was already blasting. I looked at her with tears streaming down my face. "Grandma, I don't have clean clothes. I don't have anything." She patted my hand, her eyes fierce and gentle at the same time. "Honey, you have me. And I have a Target card. Tomorrow we shop. Tonight you eat soup and sleep in a bed where nobody is going to throw you out ever." That was the first night of my new life. Grandma Dorothy's house had 3 rules. Breakfast at 8, homework before TV, and absolutely no nonsense before her second cup of coffee. It wasn't fancy and it wasn't big, but it was warm and safe and full of love. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. 2 weeks later, the CPS investigator called my grandmother. "Mrs. Reeves, Maria Santos said you might want to sit down. We've been examining the evidence, Mr. Walls provided. The timeline doesn't add up, and we found some security footage that tells a very different story. Karen's perfect plan was about to fall apart, and she had no idea what was coming. The investigation changed everything. Maria Santos wasn't just a caseworker checking boxes. She was a detective in a cardigan, and she didn't just look at evidence. She traced it, every receipt, every timestamp, every thread. And the more she pulled, the more Karen's perfect story unraveled. It started with the cash. $800 had been found in my dresser drawer. My father said it proved I'd been stealing from him for months. Open and shut case, right? Except Maria Santos actually checked the bank records. That $800 came from a single ATM withdrawal. On October 14th, the same day I was kicked out, the bank provided surveillance footage from the machine. Timestamp 2:47 in the afternoon. The person on camera wasn't me. It was Corin, clear as day. Same jacket she'd been wearing that morning. Same ponytail, same car parked in the background. Her white sedan with the dent in the bumper. From when she'd backed into a mailbox the previous summer. Here's the thing about alibis. Mine was airtight at 2:47 p.m. on October 14th. I was sitting in 5th period chemistry class, learning about molecular bonds. The school attendance system showed me present until 3:15. My teacher remembered me asking a question about covalent electrons. I couldn't have made that withdrawal. Physically impossible. I was in a classroom 12 miles away, surrounded by 30 witnesses and an electronic check-in system. Corinne thought she was so clever. But here's the thing about being a criminal mastermind. You actually have to be smart. She used our father's ATM card. Without considering that banks have cameras. She made the withdrawal in the middle of the afternoon. Without checking if I had an alibi. She bought the burner phone at a convenience store, 2 blocks from her gym, on camera. In her yoga pants with her car visible. In the parking lot some masterminds wear capes. Corinne wore Lululemon and she got caught. Because she couldn't be bothered to drive an extra 10 minutes. Then there were the pills. The bottles planted in my closet were traced back to a prescription. For Trent Barlow, Karen's boyfriend. The one with all the big ideas and no legitimate income. Anxiety medication prescribed by his doctor. Filled at the pharmacy on Oak Street. Maria Santos called that pharmacy. Interesting finding. Trent had reported those pills stolen. Filed a police report and everything. Claiming someone broke into his car and took them. Very concerned citizen behavior. Except he filed that report on October 17th. 3 days after I was kicked out. If those pills were already stolen. And hidden in my room on October 14th. Why did Trent wait 3 days to report the theft? The answer was obvious: because they weren't stolen. Karen gave them to him to plant. And then he reported them missing afterward. To cover their tracks and get a refill. The delayed theft report was like a flashing neon sign that said, "We planned this. If this story is hitting close to home, I hope you'll stick around. Because what happens next is worth every second." Drop a like. If you're rooting for me, it means the world. But the real smoking gun was the burner phone. Fake drug dealer text came from a prepaid phone. Purchased at a convenience store on October 10th. 4 days before everything went down. Maria Santos tracked down the store. And requested their security footage. The buyer was a young woman. Brown hair and a ponytail, athletic build. Paid cash, but her car was clearly visible through the window. A white sedan with a dent in the bumper. Same car, same woman. Same trail of breadcrumbs. Leading straight back to my sister. As the investigation deepened, an even uglier picture emerged. Maria Santos started digging into our family's finances. Specifically, checks written on my father's account over the past 2 years. What she found made the $800 look like pocket change. Someone had been forging checks in my father's name. For nearly 2 years, small amounts at first. 50 here, 100 there. They added up. The signatures were close, but not quite right. The money went to accounts connected to Trent Barlow and his various business ventures. Total amount stolen just under $18,000. Corinne hadn't just framed me. She'd been robbing our father blind for years. And she needed me gone before anyone noticed. My grandmother Dorothy wasn't about to let this slide. She hired Leonard Vance, an old family friend who'd practiced family law for 30 years. He'd known my mother Patricia since grade school, and when Dorothy explained what had happened, his face went hard in a way that made me glad he was on my side. Leonard filed for permanent guardianship immediately. He also filed a civil suit against Corinne for fraud, emotional distress, and whatever else he could make stick. And he made sure my trust fund was protected, with additional oversight, so nobody could touch it until I turned 18. That year taught me something I carry with me still. Keep records of everything. Every receipt, every message, every promise someone makes. Write it down. My grandmother kept a folder for every important document in her life. Bills, letters, tax returns, warranties. She called it her paper insurance. After everything that happened, I started doing the same thing. I was 16 years old and I bought my first filing cabinet. Still have it, still use it. Some habits save your life. Living with Grandma Dorothy was like learning to breathe again. After years of holding my breath. Her house wasn't big or fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. A kitchen that smelled like coffee and cinnamon. But it was warm and it was safe. And nobody there was plotting against me. She enrolled me in a new school where nobody knew my history. I made real friends for the first time. People who liked me for me. Not because they'd been fed a story about who I was supposed to be. I started seeing a counselor. Finally processing years of manipulation that I'd absorbed without even realizing. Grandma Dorothy didn't have a lot of rules. But she was strict about one thing. Dinner at 6, no exceptions. She said chaos can wait until after the meatloaf. Honestly, best advice I've ever gotten. Meanwhile, my father's world was crumbling. The CPS investigation put the entire Walls household under a microscope. Raymond was questioned multiple times, each session leaving him more exhausted and confused. How had he missed so much? How had he been so blind? Jolene started sleeping in the guest room. Conversations between them became clipped, tense, loaded with accusations neither of them wanted to say out loud. And Corin was furious, not sorry and never sorry, just angry that her plan had fallen apart. She blamed